For thousands of years, a humble tree delivered sweetness straight from its pods. No sugar mills, no refineries, just pure nutrition that sustained whole civilizations. Carbon-dated remains, elders' memories, a food source immune to monopoly, and it was all quietly erased when industry found that factories couldn't control it. Why would something so vital simply vanish? The evidence tells a different story. In the heart of the Sonoran Desert, where summer heat scorches the earth and rain falls just a handful of times each year, a line of ancient trees once stood as the backbone of survival. Archaeologists digging through the packed soil of Hohokam village sites brush away layers of dust to reveal something unexpected. Charred fragments of mesquite pods clustered deep in hearths and storage pits, their carbon signatures dating back over 1,000 years. At Snaketown, in a refuse mound buried beneath centuries of sand, a pod endocarp is pulled from a 15-centimeter layer, later confirmed by radiocarbon testing to be from around 800 CE. In the pit houses of Point of Pines, pod fragments mingle with the remains of acorns and maize, but the numbers tell the story. Over 70% of all plant remains in these layers are mesquite, sometimes more than 500 fragments in a single cubic meter. These discoveries are not isolated. At Pacuime in northern Mexico, charred pods and grinding stones lie together in the ash of communal kitchens, their dates matching the centuries when drought and famine swept the region. Archaeobotanists map these finds across the Southwest, from the Hohokam settlements to the ancestral Puebloan villages, tracing a pattern of dependence that stretches across both time and geography. Each pod tells the same story. People return to these trees year after year, harvesting what the desert would give. The evidence does not end in the ground. In weathered notebooks and tape-recorded interviews, elders recall the rhythms of harvest. A Tohono O'odham grandmother, her hands steady with memory, describes the June mornings when families would gather beneath the mesquite branches. Pods, golden and sweet, were shaken loose onto blankets, then carried home to be ground in stone mortars. The flour mixed with water became pinole, a sweet, sustaining mush that could last through the leanest months. No irrigation was needed. The trees thrived on the rain that came, however little, and still bore fruit when cornfields withered. In Apache accounts from the 1930s, the same refrain appears: pods dry sweet, no cook, pound in basin, metate for meal, grows wild where corn dies. Processing was communal. Children and elders sorted pods by hand, removing stones and insects, while others worked the mortar and pestle. The resulting flour, rich in natural sugars and fiber, could be stored in clay jars or woven baskets for years without spoiling. In some villages, caches of whole pods have been found sealed in pits, a hedge against drought or crop failure. The annual yield of a single wild tree could reach as much as 50 kilograms, enough to feed a family for months. Households would trade surplus flour for meat or pottery, weaving the tree's bounty into the fabric of local economies. This was food security built not on fields or factories, but on the quiet reliability of a tree that asked for nothing but space and time. Stable, perennial, and immune to the cycles of planting and harvest, the mesquite grove became the desert's answer to hunger. Stable isotope analysis of human remains from these sites shows a clear signature of prosopis in the diet, sometimes making up nearly half the caloric intake during the hardest years. In the words of one Pima elder, mesquite sugar feeds us through drought, and people store pods whole for years. The archaeological record is dense with proof: charred pods in every layer, grinding stones worn smooth by centuries of use, storage pits lined with the dust of vanished harvests. These are not the traces of a forgotten luxury, but the fingerprints of a staple. The story lives on in the hands of those who still gather the pods each summer, in the taste of pinole passed down from grandmother to grandchild, in the memory of a sweetness that needed no factory and no permission to endure. Inside the laboratory, the hum of centrifuges and the gleam of glassware set the stage for a process that strips away myth and leaves only evidence. Ground mesquite pods, once gathered by hand beneath desert trees, are now weighed to the milligram and portioned into trays. Technicians in white coats move with practiced precision, translating centuries of oral tradition into columns of numbers and chemical signatures. The first test is for fiber, a quality desert communities have prized for generations, though never quantified until now. Mesquite flour, unlike the fine empty crystals of refined sugar, is packed with both soluble and insoluble fibers. The numbers are striking, up to 25 grams of fiber per 100 grams of flour, a concentration that dwarfs most grains and puts cane sugar zero into sharp relief. This fiber slows digestion, creating a steady release of energy, and acts as a buffer for the gut, feeding beneficial bacteria and supporting a resilient microbiome. In the data, the difference is immediate and clear. One is a quick burn, the other a slow sustaining ember. Mineral analysis follows. Atomic absorption spectrometers flicker, translating invisible elements into hard data. Mesquite flour emerges as a mineral powerhouse, high in calcium, magnesium, potassium, and iron. Each 100-gram serving delivers around 250 milligrams of calcium, more than a glass of milk, 60 milligrams of magnesium, and 3 milligrams of iron, rivaling the content of leafy greens and surpassing many nuts. These numbers are not random. They are the result of a plant adapted to survive in poor soils and drought, encoding a survival kit in every pod. A 2018 Arizona State University study confirms these findings, matching the lab's own results and adding weight to the case for mesquite as a staple. In times of scarcity, these minerals are not just beneficial, they are essential, supporting bone health, blood formation, and metabolic resilience when other foods fail. Attention turns to sugar composition, the heart of the pod's nutritional advantage. Technicians dissolve samples in distilled water and inject them into high-performance liquid chromatography machines. The resulting graphs tell a story that diverges sharply from the narrative of table sugar. Mesquite's sweetness is complex, built on a foundation of fructose, sucrose, and most notably, galactomannan and fructooligosaccharides, sugars that digest slowly and do not flood the bloodstream. Glycemic Indian testing, performed with blood glucose monitors on volunteer subjects, reveals a glycemic index of 25 to 35 for mesquite flour, compared to 65 or higher for cane sugar. The body absorbs these sugars gradually, avoiding the rapid spikes and crashes that have become hallmarks of modern metabolic disease. The lab notes are succinct. No rapid glucose rise, slow, sustained release. Micronutrient panels add further dimension. Mesquite flour is rich in zinc, manganese, copper, and trace B vitamins, nutrients often stripped from industrial sweeteners during processing. Protein content stands at about 13 grams per 100 grams, unusual for a sweetener and significant for satiety. Combined with fiber, this protein makes mesquite uniquely filling. A bowl of pinole, the traditional roasted flour, can keep hunger at bay for hours. Spectrographic analysis from a USDA panel reveals the presence of antioxidant compounds, flavonoids, and polyphenols, usually lost in the refining of sugar. These molecules help neutralize oxidative stress, offering protection at the cellular level and contributing to the flour's reputation as a food that sustains through hardship. Shelf life testing is the final step. Sealed in glass jars or woven baskets, mesquite flour resists spoilage for years. Its low moisture content and natural antimicrobial compounds inhibit the growth of mold and insects. In controlled humidity chambers, samples stored for 12 months retain their sweetness, color, and nutritional value, a testament to the pod's design for survival. Where other foods rot or lose potency, mesquite endures, offering security in the face of drought and scarcity. The lab's final report, reads like an inventory of survival, listing high fiber, slow digesting sugars, dense minerals, a full suite of micronutrients, and a shelf life measured in years. There is no need for chemical processing, no additives or preservatives required. Industrial sugar, by comparison, offers only calories, quick energy, with none of the supporting nutrients. The numbers confirm what desert communities have always known. The pod is not just a source of sweetness, but a complete food, capable of sustaining life where little else will grow. In the language of science, the old knowledge is made new again. The value of the pod is not a matter of nostalgia or legend, but a fact, measurable, repeatable, and as relevant now as it was 1,000 years ago, standing ready for a world that may need its lessons once more. Industrial sugar isn't just a product, it's a machine. The model starts with land, vast monocultures of cane or beet, planted and replanted every season. Each harvest feeds a network of mills, refineries, shipping lanes, and warehouses, all linked by contracts and capital. Every step in this chain, from the first seed to the final sack of sugar, requires investment, labor, and constant management. The costs are high, but so are the returns, because the system is designed for repeat sales. Cane and beet sugar must be bought, processed, and shipped out again and again. Mesquite, on the other hand, breaks every rule of this model. A wild tree, no irrigation, no fertilizer, no annual planting. Once established, it produces sweet pods for decades, sometimes centuries, with no outside input. The cost per calorie drops to almost nothing after the first few years. There is no need for factories or refineries. Families can process the pods at home using tools that last generations. One tree can yield up to 50 kilograms of pods in a year, enough to feed a household for months, without ever entering a market or supply chain. For industrial sugar, this is a problem. There is no recurring purchase, no way to control the flow from tree to table. You can't patent a wild growth or bill for every bowl of pinola made in a family kitchen. The economics are clear: a food that grows itself, stores for years, and bypasses every checkpoint of the industrial system is not just inconvenient, it is incompatible. And that is why, as sugar became big business, trees like mesquite were quietly pushed aside. In the mid-20th century, a quiet but decisive series of policy actions began to reshape the land. Agricultural extension bulletins circulated through rural offices, stamped with the authority of state and federal agencies. One such bulletin, published in 1953 by a Southwestern land-grant university, urged landowners to clear native groves, including mesquite, describing them as obstacles to profitable agriculture. Remove brush species to maximize row crop yield. Maps produced by county surveyors from 1955 to 1962 show a steady conversion of wild groves into irrigated fields. The boundaries of mesquite stands erased and replaced by neat rectangles of alfalfa, cotton, and increasingly sugar beet. University syllabi from the same era tell a similar story, but by omission. An archived 1961 introductory agronomy course lists sugarcane, beet, and sorghum as primary sweetener crops. The section on native food plants is brief, with no mention of mesquite or its uses. In the extension curriculum, a single footnote refers to mesquite as a problematic invader and recommends removal with chemical brush killers. These documents do not announce a ban, nor do they explain the loss in moral terms. Instead, they record a shift in priorities, a deliberate forgetting, codified in the paperwork of progress. The evidence remains: bulletins, maps, and syllabi, each one a step in the displacement of a food system that had worked for generations without factories or markets. Seed bank catalogs from the late 20th century list hundreds of crop varieties, but the sweet pod tree is nowhere to be found. In the records of national germplasm banks, those vaults meant to safeguard agricultural diversity Its absence is not explained, only repeated. Funding ledgers for agricultural research, scanned line by line, show grants for sugar beet, cane, and sorghum, but not a single line for the tree that once fed whole regions. University archives hold stacks of proposals for refining sugar, improving yields, and engineering pest resistance, while the pod's nutritional chemistry is left unstudied. In the minutes of academic committees, decisions about which crops deserve preservation rarely mention wild perennials. When the International Board for Plant Genetic Resources published its first global inventory in 1976, the tree appears only as a footnote, tagged as a rangeland species, useful for shade, not for food. Extension Service newsletters from the 1980s describe brush management techniques, recommending herbicides for problem species in arid pastures. No mention of flower, no recipes, no reference to the tree's role in food security. In these silent omissions, memory erodes. Each missing grant, each unlisted species, each erased footnote becomes a small act of forgetting. Within a generation, the pod tree's place in the food system is no longer debated. Within 2 generations, even its existence as a staple is doubted. What remains is a gap, an absence that must be rediscovered, not restored. On a table in a university nutrition lab, small brown cubes of mesquite flour are lined up beside vials of blood serum. Over the last year, researchers have been testing the flour's effects in real-world settings, not just on paper. In a controlled glycemic index trial, volunteers ate porridge made from freshly milled pods. Blood glucose monitors recorded their response, a steady, gentle curve with a peak far below that of white sugar. The average glycemic index came in at 29, less than half that of cane sugar. In a pilot project with a desert community health clinic, patients who swapped refined sugar for mesquite flour in daily meals saw a 20% increase in dietary stability markers over 6 months. No spikes, no crashes. The lead researcher reviews the charts, noting improved fiber intake, stable energy, and micronutrient gains. The numbers confirm what tradition has long claimed. This ancient sweetness delivers, even under modern scrutiny. Layering land conversion maps, university bulletins, and lab charts reveals a pattern that resists easy explanation. The same tree that once anchored food security is missing from every modern syllabus and seed bank ledger, its name replaced by clinical codes for brush removal and rangeland management. Agricultural extension documents from the 1950s and the 1960s, stamped with government seals, recommend clearing native groves in language that never mentions food, only yield, profit, and efficiency. Lab data confirms what was lost, a perennial source of sweetness, nutrition, and stability, erased not by accident, but by a system that profits from repetition. The paper trail does not accuse, but it aligns. The economic logic is plain. A tree that feeds people for decades without purchase cannot survive in a world built on annual sales. The question remains, when food security stands in the way of business, what and who gets remembered? Today, over 80% of the world's sugar comes from industrial crops that require heavy processing, while natural alternatives remain sidelined. As food costs climb and chronic diseases linked to refined sugar surge, the forgotten trees stand as proof. Resilience once grew outside the market's reach. The real question now, who benefits when food security is erased for profit? Some sweetness does not disappear, it just waits to be rediscovered.